Does not the soul long for closeness, for connection with other souls?
Yes, of course. But this is the need for real spiritual communion with its true eternal relatives, its soulmates, as it so beautifully exists before and after the earthly incarnation in the other world.
Do not satisfy your desire for community by uniting bodies, but by spiritual communion.
Look for people who are spiritually close to you. If you cannot find them on earth, get in touch with them in meditation, because they certainly exist in the upper world, and there you will meet them again, at the latest after death.
True, spiritual, sexless attraction between individual souls, whether in or out of physical embodiment, arises from the knowledge that they are all reflections of the Oversoul, and they bear no resemblance to sex instincts or to any grade of matter pertaining to the physical plane.
Unfortunately, most of the time people are seeking the connection of the bodies, which is why what they call love so often fails.
Unfortunately, the desire for union of physical bodies is far in excess of the desire for union on the spiritual plane, and those particular operations of the principle of desire must be reversed.
Make no mistake, passion, the physical attraction between the sexes, has nothing to do with the selfless spiritual love of the soul.
Human passion, taking upon itself the semblance of divine selfless love, deceives the lower self into the belief that that which is in fact the effect of passion is of the nature of the soul, which is passionless. Therefore, the average person in the throes of what is believed to be spiritual love is not willing to admit that the attraction between the opposite sexes is the action of polarity, matter. Lust was given to the worm, and the cherub stands before God.
You have got to choose. You cannot serve both, spirit, the soul, and matter, the body.
Every step of the way of conscious at-one-ment with divinity is renunciation. Spirit and matter cannot meet. One must disappear in the face of the other. You cannot reach the height of attainment with your back weighted with the heavy load which self-indulgence makes. You cannot gain purity by means of passion. While students have been repeatedly told that attainment of the spiritual creative power is altogether impossible, save by one method, as a rule, they are continually seeking some other method of combining the action of the lower creative functions with those of the higher or spiritual plane, while, in reality, the gulf between the two is impassable. Man is continually seeking some method by which he can adjust or overcome the difficulties in the way of his belief in the unity in action of two or more spiritual counterparts, and at the same time make it possible for him to seek and find the physical bodies of those counterparts, and justify to his conscience what he knows in reality is purely sexual attraction between such partners.
The spiritual man recognizes his desire for the opposite sex is in truth a longing for redemption, for the salvation of his soul, which man, above all, seeks with women.
Die düstere Glut, die hier ich fühle brennen, sollt ich unseliger sie Liebe nennen? Ach nein, die Sehnsucht ist es nach dem Heil, wird es durch solchen Engel mir zuteil. The dull glow I feel burning, shall I in my misery call it love? Ah, no, it is the yearning for redemption. Would that through such an angel it came true.
Agni Yoga does not set up pointless prohibitions.
Religion began to prohibit something without knowing exactly why.
If we approach our topic scientifically, we see male semen is a treasure, a precious energy that needs to be handled with care.
One may weigh, one may analyze the semen up to the most minute particles, but still there remains an imperceptible and inscrutable substance, as irreplaceable as the vital force of a seed. Such an extraordinary substance must be very precious and must have some extremely important qualities. Even a fool will comprehend this.
We should spend this creative power on spiritual matters rather than on physical ones.
Experiment provides certainly the best proof. If we compare two individuals, of whom one dissipates the vital substance, while the other consciously conserves it, we will be amazed at how much more sensitive the spiritual apparatus of the second becomes. The quality of his labors becomes entirely different, and the quantity of his projects and ideas multiplies. That is why temperance is not a pathological renunciation, but a sensible action. To bestow life does not mean to cast away the entire supply of vital substance.
We cannot use the same force twice. We can direct it either into the sexual organs or into the higher centers, but not into both at the same time.
By copulation, the spiritual creative energy is no longer available on the spiritual plane. We can transform the energy so that it flows into high channels instead of into low ones. This is the real secret of the crucifixion, the secret of why passion, greed, and hate must be killed out. Spiritual energy cannot awaken to action those atrophied centers, while the same energy is used up in gratification of lower desire. To use a homely metaphor, you cannot eat your cake and keep it too. As I have said before, the gulf between spirit and matter is impassable. The substance constituting those centers must be transmuted, i.e., raised to higher vibration.
Our spiritual creativity grows through physical temperance.
An irreplaceable treasure must be preserved. Thus let us picture temperance as wings.
The sex drive is responsible for a tremendous amount of suffering. Each of us has either experienced that already himself, or is aware of countless examples from his environment. The purely physical attraction between man and woman, or the sexual distress of the man, chain together people who actually do not belong to each other at all. As a consequence, children are born who are unwelcome and accordingly treated unkindly, who muddle up an entire life plan or overstrain the mothers to such an extent that in the end only an abortion remains as a last resort.
Is abortion that bad?
It means the killing of a living human being. Let there be no mistake about that.
To suppress the conception of children is worse than murder. Abortion is most definitely murder. Therefore, only in cases where the mother's life is in danger should it take place.
Some who look back at their lives may find that suffering outweighs joy.
In essence, man's excessive production of sperm is an erroneous development of nature.
It makes no sense that pressure should force a healthy man to have intercourse with a woman so often, about once a week. The earth cannot support that many children, and nobody can take care of them. Basically, it would be much more appropriate if, as with some animals, the mating season were only once a year. And even that is still too much for humanity. I would like to state this without condemnation and without accusing the natural order or even God. Perhaps the fault lies with ourselves. Maybe we have enjoyed the sexual pleasures in earlier existences to such an extent that this drive multiplied more and more, from incarnation to incarnation, and from generation to generation, far beyond the natural appropriate measure.
The The sexually creative power of man is not natural, or rather was not at the beginning. It was an abnormal diversion from the course of human or divine nature, and all tends to make away with it. A wrong development of nature? That seems doubtful to me. Isn't sexuality a natural expression of man, even willed by God?
Well, we can put it another way. Sexuality is a rather primitive, coarse, outdated method of providing a soul with a vehicle with which it can appear on the material plane. Like walking on 4 legs, it can and must be replaced over time by a higher stage of development. Passion numbs, coarsens our subtle centers which are meant for spiritual sensations. As we ascend and refine, we will find a finer, more spiritual way of creating new life.
What do you find so primitive about the union of man and woman?
Well, the physical functions related to conception, pregnancy and childbirth are rather repugnant to a spiritual person, unless he is in the frenzy of passion. Furthermore, it is not very pleasant to face the need of being born again as a small, helpless child in unclean diapers, of having to learn over many years to walk, speak, mathematics, English, and everything else that defines a mature person, of suffering again the confusions of puberty, the trials and tribulations of approaching the opposite sex, and so on.
In the process of evolution, nature will remove the imperfections of physical conception, birth, and helpless babyhood. This eventually will depart into the realm of the legendary.
A higher stage of evolution will do without sexuality, physical conception, and birth.
The man of the future will create offspring through his spiritual power. In the more highly developed of the present race, there is an intuitive perception of a future race and a period when the two aspects of sex will again be reunited, and a sexless, a highly developed race will be evolved. The era of physical generation will be over for these souls. The power of creation by will and yoga, will and mind, will be possessed by each such unit. For the formation of the body of the incarnating spirit, the spiritual forces of both mother and father will be necessary and will participate in this process of formation. And nourishment, in general, will not require a smoky hearth.
We should slowly begin to adapt to and prepare for this scenario by advancing our spiritual growth. When we progress on the ascending arc of evolution, when we refine and spiritualize ourselves, the sex drive will naturally subside.
The greater the soul grows, the more the physical recedes. When these centers, through which both the masculine and feminine principles primarily operate, are equalized, sex, as you know it, will disappear. The sexual passion will be raised. Where the two are equal, sexual desire no longer controls. The divine hermaphrodite is created, in whom exists the power of creation by will and yoga. Man, in the end of the 6th and 7th races, will not have sexual organs.